and honored to have everyone here in the assembly with us. We're thankful for all of those that will be watching this, whether it's through the live stream or it being archived later. We are continuing in our study of the ways of the wanderer. We've been jumping in and out of the book of Hebrews as we've gone through a look at Romans 6 and other information that was going on before going into that material. But the reason why we have this jumping back and forth from Romans 6, the book of James, going into Hebrews is because the Hebrew letter, the Hebrew epistle, is all about this very topic that we're going through. And that you have Christians of the first century, and that they were wanting to leave the gospel system, stop following Christ, and to go back under that Old Testament system. To go from something new and that has, some minor changes to it, to something that they were comfortable with, familiar with, that they had grown up with for thousands and thousands of years. But even as we are striving to understand why it is that people have that desire to leave what the truth is, to wander from the truth, to then to go back to these old things, that being a part of it, but we're going to study today another element of why it is that people have a desire to give up and try to counteract that and to fight against it. And that today we're going to study about and to learn just how to hold on. We mentioned last time how it is that this section is going to be beneficial and help three different groups of people. Those that are presently faithful, those that are Christians and continuing to live as a Christian does, but we're going to add another element to that. And that we are happy living that kind of life. And that we are just wanting to encourage that class of person by simply saying, hold on. Do not give up. Just keep going. The second category, those that have started the Christian life but are now unfaithful. And that they need to be shown that the possibility to just simply hold on and not give up and see the possibility of come home. And for those who have not obeyed the gospel, who are not Christians, and that out of fear that they could never see it through. Learning how we're to hold on to the Lord and His way of life. And that we can all be obedient in this effort. So what it's like to live this life. There are different figures used to describe genuine Christianity. And we say genuine because there are some false views and false ways that are so-called Christianity. Well, one of those ways is that it's described as being in the army, to fight as a soldier. And that in having that description, Paul gives to these brethren the very element that we are talking about. Just hold on. Ephesians 6, 10 through 12. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of His might. We're wanting to have that strength. Part of what helps us in that effort is by putting on the whole armor of God, and that Paul gives the description of that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. So much of warfare is simply being able to hold a position. One of the greatest battles, I'm now getting my wars mixed up, it was either World War I or World War II, and it's called the Battle of the Bulge. I'm getting confirmation that's World War II. Thank you. And all that battle was weeks long, months long of fighting over one single position. and that the Allied forces had to hold that position, not lose it, not relinquish it. And if they gave it up, then the Germans would be able to rush right through. But is that how we think about warfare? Is that how we think about going out and fighting? Now, throughout World War II, the Germans were really good about that because of Blitzkrieg. They took a lot of position. But then finally, when you have the good guys coming in and beginning to push back, then it became a situation of just simply hold this position. Hold this bridge. Do not lose this. That's what our warfare is like. Yes, we might have those opportunities where we're able to go out and to gain something. But so much of fighting is just all about keep what you have. And that's what Paul says. Just be able to stand. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. If we're going to be able to stand against these things, hold on. We've got to have that strength. But strength within itself is not the primary factor. There's another element in how the Bible describes the Christian life that is going to go along with this and that we must have alongside of this strength. And that's pictured with the idea of running the race. Running a marathon. The one point of specific comparison of running track or running a marathon, if you will, is the necessity of patience. Holding on. Going on to the finish line. Going further when your body is saying, I cannot go anymore. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, wherefore seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. You may have strength, but if you do not have patience, strength counts for very little. In the workout world, a person who has the physique without actually being able to do anything with the muscles, those are called show muscles. You're not doing those to use them for anything. It's just for show. Having this patience, the Hebrew writer is writing to these brethren, he's saying, you need patience if you're going to make this. And he is pointing to the fact that, you know what, we have a cloud of witnesses. We have those examples beyond us of their patience. And that's how it is that they get to be a witness. That's how they get to be the example. They had that patience that you are needing to have, that you may last through this race. And these brethren, some of them were neglecting the very idea and the very principle of salvation that they had. The goal that was set before them. Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 and then verse 3, therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. This is what was happening with these brethren. You're letting these things slide off. You're not paying attention. You're not being vigilant. You're not being sober. Verse 3, because of this, the Hebrew writer then says, how shall we escape? If you let these things slip, here's what you're actually doing. If we neglect so great salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him. They were in danger of developing an evil heart of unbelief, as we studied before from Hebrews 3, 12, and 13. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God, but exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. And that we jump to the end of this epistle. Here are all the warnings. At the end, the Hebrew writer gives the information on how you can stop this from happening. Patience. We have set before us, once again, the possibility of sinning willfully and thus becoming unfaithful. Hebrews 10, 26 and 27. For if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sin, but a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. In view of these serious dangers and these serious problems, we have a dire need. And that need is patience. We have the explanation given to us after the discussion of these multiple problems, dangers, and consequences in this very chapter, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35. Cast not away, therefore, your confidence. Isn't that exactly what brethren do when they get discouraged? When they get overwhelmed? When they lose heart? Just cast it away. Throw it off. Cast not away, therefore, your confidence. The knowledge that we have. The truth that we know. And that confidence which hath great recompense of reward. Why are we holding on as tightly and as badly as we are? We know there's a reward at the end of this. Isn't that what Paul wrote to the Corinthian brethren? You run a race for what? For a prize. You run this physical race for a crown. But the contrast is given that in this physical race there's only one winner. But in this spiritual race that we're running, this life that we're striving to live, there is a reward for every single one of us. And here's how you're going to make it. For ye have need. If we're going to make it, this is what we must have. You can be as strong as you want to be, as you think you might be. But if you don't have endurance, it's not going to get you very far. We have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. Look, the reward, the promise, only comes after you have done. I didn't think there was any works involved in what we're doing here. I didn't think we were working for anything. Where'd you get that idea? Absolutely. I am doing what I'm doing because God has made me a promise. This is right to do. But God's also made a promise. You do my will, you're going to receive a reward. We need patience, and patience is possible. But patience does not come the way that one man prayed, and we all know the joke. Lord, I pray for patience, and I want it right now. That's how we would like it. But patience is a process. Patience is a quality of character that is belonging to a child of God. It's listed right in there as being the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Well, now that we know this is what we need. We need this patience. We need this long-sufferingness. Now we need an explanation of what that patience actually is. And I've already given it away because I got ahead of myself. Patience, one Greek word that's used, that is used then translated into our English as patience, is hupomeno. It's a compound word that carries the definition to abide under. So you just think about that, illustrated in your brain. It's like a person who is standing under a heavy weight and having to hold it up. Guess what you're going to need so as to be successful in that? You're going to need patience or endurance. That doesn't come overnight. You've got to train that. A person who runs a marathon does not just go out and run a marathon. You start out at a mile. Once you get comfortable with a mile, you run 2 miles, then 3, then 4, then whatever the number of a marathon actually is. Anybody that would just try to jump off the couch and then go run a marathon is out of their mind. But that's how a lot of people try to live the Christian life. And they get discouraged and they quit. And we even have the word long-suffering, sometimes being translated as patience, as found in Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 12. And that this is describing Abraham and how he patiently endured and received God's promises. That ye be not slothful, but followers of them who through faith and patience, macrothemia, inherit the promise. But when we're considering this element of patience and its necessity in our lives, we're not just simply wanting to view from the side of, okay, here's patience and here's what we're actually needing. We want to examine the opposites of patience so that we might better appreciate the nature of this need of a Christian's character. Contrasted with patience is the possibility of what's described in Hebrews 12 and verse 3. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners, referencing the Christ, against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Here's the opposite of having that endurance. You're running the race, you get wearied, and you collapse. This is what happens to some people. And that we've gone through all of these studies together to actually be able to pinpoint and to be able to deal with different situations as to why people give up. Some people do it out of rebellion. Okay, we've got to handle them. Some people do it out of negligence. Some people do it because they're overcome. They're overwhelmed. In all those different fashions. And now here we are, and that we just have some that they're going and going and going, and then they just collapse. And when we're thinking of, and when we're considering this element of patience, endurance, and how it is that it's happening here in this text, notice where, so we're talking about running a race, and that's a physical process. Your body is doing that. But you notice in this text, it tells us where the problem actually starts. When you become wearied and faint in your minds. Your body can go further and do more than what you think. You know what starts telling, or why it is your body starts trying to shut down after a certain point? And the studies show this. When you're doing some type of physical activity, you're only giving about 80%. And that you can do more. But what starts telling you that you can't? Your mind. It's your thoughts that start coming in and start killing this endurance. And thus the Hebrew writer tells us that's where this has to start. You want to run the race? You better train your mind as much as what you're training your body. That as you're going through and your brain starts telling you, can't go anymore. I've got this stitch in my side, hard time breathing, palms are sweaty. You don't have to listen to that. You can go just a little bit longer. And so you just picture someone working in a factory or working some other job, and they've got to work a double. Somebody's out. We need you to take their place. And here they are on the job, on their feet, whatever they're doing, and doing 16 hours of that type of work. And just imagine how tired and weary they would be once they finished. This is the way some people seem to react to the Christian life. Our brain, our thoughts start telling us, you know what, this is too difficult. And we start trying to cast off the things that we know. We start trying to find ways to cut corners. We start trying to find ways to make it easier for us to do this. Some brethren, they become weary of attending worship assemblies. You know, coming twice on Sunday, once on Wednesday, you know, that's really asking a lot, is it? Honestly, is it? That's a lack of endurance. And why is that? Because you've let those thoughts come into your brain. Oh, that's asking too much. That's the wrong mindset. They become weary of the assembly. They become weary of trying to evangelize, to teach people and try to convert them. Just what we were going through in our Bible study with John chapter 4. Why wouldn't the Jews take the time to just go a little ways north and help the Samaritans? No endurance. No patience. Weary. They become wearied of trying to serve the Lord by serving the needs of other people. To live a servant's lifestyle. That becomes tiresome. We weary from struggling with temptations. And then finally, some people just say, you know, I'm just tired of trying. And that I'm just tired of trying to do the right thing all the time. That's our minds not being trained. That's running the race and your mind telling you you're tired. Stop. No, I can go a little bit more. No, I can keep going. And what makes this even more perilous and even more difficult is when we go back to that illustration of being a soldier in an army. And that here you are in this area and you're fighting a battle. And then the call comes in, we need to pull you from this fight to go over here to this fight. And it very well could be the case, well, you know, this fight is still raging on, we can't leave. And it could even be the case, okay, we fought our battle and now we're victorious. And then the call comes in, well, we need you to come over here. That gets tiring. And I make that point because that's what we've got going on with this congregation. Here we are trying to handle things here in Montana, and then we're having to deal with a fight that's going on in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Georgia. We've had to deal with a fight in Idaho over spiritual matters. I can tell you, those kind of calls get tiring. But you have to answer. Because souls are at stake. Souls are on the line. As we're battling against the powers of darkness and these spiritual and carnal elements, and that when we realize, okay, this is what is at stake, and though our bodies would tell us, you need rest, you're beaten, and you're battered, I've got one more fight in me. I can do this all day. So here we're getting the glimpse of the opposite attitude of patience. It's that weariness. Starts in the mind. But then consider the next point. There's this weariness that then leads to something else. That weariness leads to fainting. You just keel over. You just collapse. You're like that person on the assembly line. You've been there all day. And then the lights just go out. Many of you already know most of the stories about me fainting. Seeing a lot of chuckles. And they are pretty funny. But there's something really interesting about when a person faints, and that you know when it's coming. Maybe not the first time, but with me and doing it multiple times, it's just like, okay, I know this is happening. And it's just a sense of you're losing control. That feeling just comes on you. It's just like, I'm not in control. And you're not in control, and you do not know how to stop what's happening. And that in most situations, in most cases, there is no way to stop it. It's just, this is happening. But even though that happens, once it happens, there are measures that can take place so as to bring somebody out of it. Elevate the feet. Go get an ice pack or a cold rag. Or if it's really intense, then get smelling salts. And that's the picture of people wandering away and falling spiritually. They are going and going and going, and then they just collapse. But there's a way to come out of that. People faint spiritually. And they may even sense that they are losing control of that spirit, of these spiritual characteristics and these things in their lives. And they just do not know what to do about the situation. For whatever reason, the assemblies are becoming less enjoyable. Singing is losing its excitement. The Lord's Supper no longer produces any feelings of gratitude, appreciation, humility, and no longer produces any desire of commitment to God. Listening to God's Word, classes, sermons, extra study that we're involved in doing just no longer holds our attention. We're fainting. Just no motivation to try to be an instrument in God's hand for the saving of lost souls. Okay, we know what's going on. We can diagnose that. You're tired. You're losing strength. You're telling yourself it would just be easier to stop. But that's where you have to battle those thoughts. No, I can keep going. Personal prayer and Bible study seem to be a waste of time. When spiritually fainting, one knows that something is happening. And that as it happens, as it does in the physical sense, you may just need someone to come along and to help you wake up and to recover. That's the picture that's being given to these brethren. Look, what you're doing is dangerous. The mentality that you have, it's perilous. It's going to cause you trouble. But the understanding is there. The Hebrew writer is saying to them, I know what you're going through. And every Christian knows what this is like. The Hebrews can help someone fainting and faltering. It gives us this verbal picture for our minds. We're in Hebrews 12:3. You drop down to verse 12. Here's what you do. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees. What is the reality of the Christian life? You are going to get tired. And we've seen this portrayed many times. Verse 13 says, and make straight paths for feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let rather be healed. Help somebody along. To make the path straight is to remove any obstacles, any snares, to where even the lame are able to go through it. And the picture is being given, if there's too many obstacles, what's going to be the desire? Well, I don't want to go this way. I'm going to turn out. I'm going to try to find another way to go. Can't do that. We've heard it time and time again from good brethren being overburdened, overwhelmed, and beaten down, give the exclamation, well, I just give up. And it's reinforced by the dropping of hands. But that's the opposite of patience. That's the opposite of this endurance. And in this context, we are given a synonym for patience, which brings everything into sharper focus for all of us. And it's Hebrews 12 and verse 2. The best picture of endurance that there is, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that, and here's our word, endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. So here's what we've been studying all this time, but we didn't put it in its context. Is what you're going through really all that difficult? When I compare it to Jesus, no. Verse 7, if ye endure chastening, the correction which comes from God, God dealeth with you as with sons, for what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? Even the Hebrew writer recognizes what he's writing to this brethren could possibly tip them over the edge. You know what? This could actually end up being the final straw. But he brings it all into perspective. I know you're struggling. I know this is difficult. And that even with what I'm telling you is probably putting extra weight on you. But please endure it. To endure and to have this endurance, to hold on, to go on, to march on, to not give up, to be steadfast, to be faithful. The Hebrew writer says there's a cloud of witness that's around us. There's others that we can look to. But ultimately, you just need to look to the Lord. Jesus is that example of patience for us. The crucifixion was not easy. And in spite of scorn, Jesus held on. Think about the endurance that was needed for that. And that he did it for us. In spite of pain and rejection, Jesus kept going. And even when he prayed for the cup to pass in the garden, if it was possible, and even asking that, knowing that it was not possible, he did not faint. And as we've been going through the study, the reality has been, we've been trying to impress upon our minds the reality that at some point we will quit. We will want to quit. We're going to come to a hurdle that we think that we cannot get over. We're going to come to a mountain that we think that we cannot scale. And so what do we need? They say the best way to train is to train with a partner. Because you're going to push each other. More than likely, if I had tried to do some of the hikes that we've done on my own, I wouldn't have finished it. But because Jordan, Reese, especially that one with Riley, I just could not let Riley beat me. You got people telling you, just keep going. Okay, we'll go to this point, we'll take a little break. Don't give up. Take a moment. You need to take a moment, catch your breath. Okay, let's do it. And let's get back after it. Sometimes that's what happens to us spiritually. So in conclusion, being steadfast, faithfully living for God is going to be a process. The training never stops. Because there's always going to be another race. Even when you've gone to one battle and you've been victorious on that battle, guess what? There's going to be another one. So you train all the time. Patience, endurance is not doing right only when the weather is right. So that ties back into Jordan's sermon about making these decisions and making them now, instead of trying to do it later for the perfect day. Every workout starts on Monday. But then usually we find something that, you know what, this Monday's just not the right one. So next Monday. And that's what we do spiritually. Yeah, I need to work on this, but, situation's just not right. Doesn't matter. We are encouraged to be instant in season, out of season. So it's not just about doing what's right only when the weather is right, but it's holding on, enduring to Christ when the storm's raging, but even when we're at peace. Holding on to Christ no matter what the physical circumstances are, and no matter what temptation it is that is in front of you. And that's even what the Hebrew writer said, that we set beside, or we throw off, every weight of sin that easily besets us. All right, you know what? That's a burden. That's causing a problem. It's messing up my training. Set it aside. Don't even hold on to it. And go on with the work that Christ has given to us, even when other brethren have given up on you. There are so many reasons to give up, but in comparison to what it is we have to gain if we hold on and remain faithful, they do not even compare. And we desire, we hope, that this will produce hope in those that want to be a Christian. And to recognize, here's what you're signing up for. You're signing up for the army, you're signing up for a marathon. Okay, training starts. I'm committing to this. And then the realization of, as with physical training, you're going to want to give up, but you're going to have people with you that will encourage you and tell you, hey, don't stop here. You stop here, you won't be able to see what's on the other side. And that if that is the desire for those that have not obeyed the gospel, that they'll do it. To repent of a past life of sin and service to sin, and have a desire to commit oneself to Christ. To confess Him with the mouth that He is the Lord and Savior, and be willing to be baptized in water for the remission of your sins, to have those sins forgiven, to have that weight removed, and to make the training easier. And for those of us that have been Christians for some time, that have been involved in this fight for a while, just stick with it. Just do what you can to stand. And let's be ready to encourage those to lift the feeble hands that are drooping and the knees that shake. If anybody has any needs or requests for prayers, we offer this time.